Chris,
Todd,
what's going on, man?
just living the dream. Glad to be with you tonight.
You got it, man. I'm happy to be with you too. You know, today here in Maryland, it was Texas kind of hot.
Yeah, it was Texas kind of hot in Texas too.
Man, what was the temperature in Dallas today?
I think it topped out at 97, but our feel like temperature was 103. So you didn't want to be outside too long.
It was hot here too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we were like 93 or 94, but I mean, it was crazy. I was actually out on a modular construction build today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that a little bit. I think I was telling you, we're actually doing a vlog on a modular build right now, and it's kind of stalled a little bit. The builder had some difficulty that was out of his control with the county and sewer line or water line or something, or both, actually, I think it was. But yeah, we're going to have some fun tonight, man. So looking forward to chatting it up about factory built homes. For those of you that are watching, manufactured homes are sometimes referred to as mobile homes or trailer homes. And typically they're on a steel chassis. There's been a lot of changes through the years. Modular homes are pre-assembled house sections that are actually set on the home site. And both of these types of homes are factory made, but each has different financing options. We're going to learn about that tonight. And then I think, and Chris is going to set us straight, I think that there are even different code requirements, maybe, for the two different types of factory-made houses, manufactured homes, modular homes. Guys, a lot of people think, they get confused. They don't know which is, which. And tonight we're going to clear it up for you. So if you're considering building a home, it's going to be a great show for you. If you're an agent or somebody serving the industry, a builder, maybe it's something that you're thinking about doing, getting into as an option. We're going to give you a lot of information. We're going to explain the differences between the two, manufactured homes, modular homes. And we're really going to find out what everybody wants to know is which is more valuable when it comes time to sell. So I'm Todd Sachs. I'm a broker and founder of Sachs Realty. We are a small brokerage here in Maryland. We serve both residential and commercial clientele, both sellers, buyers, and also tenants and landlords. So if you're not in Maryland, you're anywhere in the country and you don't have an agent, you need one, I have an amazing broker network. Just hit me up. I'll be glad to point you in the right direction with somebody that is really awesome and sitting near you. Tonight, I have Chris Nicely. He's been in factory housing for many years. And he's got a couple websites that cover everything, from the manufacturer to the modular side. And welcome, Chris, to our podcast.
Thanks, Todd. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about factory built housing and the role it's playing in housing in general, and the potential role it could have in the attainable, affordable housing sector. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Kind of bring us up to speed, because you've been in the building industry for quite some time. Just kind of give us the progression through the years.
Yeah, it feels like generations, to be honest with you. My grandfather was a home builder over in West Virginia in the Eastern Panhandle, and learned a lot from him throughout the years, and have been in construction and home building products for my whole career, and culminated in the manufactured housing industry back in '95 when I joined Clayton Homes at that point in time, and have had a lot of experiences that help me understand the potential role, the differences, the benefits, and some of those things in factory built housing. And so it's I find myself here, and one of the old dogs that maybe saw some of the old tricks and don't like some of the old tricks, and now watching some of the new tricks and really appreciating the journey the product has made through the years to what it is today.
So what do you actually do right now? So I know you have, I know you travel the country. And I know here in Maryland, we were talking about, I mean, you're like, your thumb is on the market. We were just talking briefly a couple weeks ago, and you mentioned a neighborhood close to me where, modular or manufactured homes was being built. And you have
Yep.
a chance to travel all throughout the country. So, I mean, what do you do actually?
Well, as president of manufacturedhomes.com and modularhomes.com, what we try to do is showcase the very best in the country in those different home categories. And as a part of that, what we do is we stay really close in touch with the developers, the builders, the dealers that are associated with factory built housing. And because of our awareness of the marketplace, we then learn about the innovations that are going on in the industry, where it's happening, what it's going. I was recently just today on a call with a gentleman out of northeastern Tennessee about a development that he is doing up near Johnson City with the new class, what they call new class or cross mod or MH Advantage type homes up in that area, which is going to deliver very high value. The appraisals are coming in right at the listing price. So a lot of fun things going on. And quite frankly, I try to stay in touch with whatever is innovative in the marketplace and try to understand how, in fact, we as an industry, as a housing industry, can leverage that information to deliver more value to our home buyers. So, and I know that's what you're trying to do every day when you have a client that's looking for a home.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of frustrated buyers too that, through this housing shortage that
Yep.
has been happening all over the country for several years now. People are definitely wanting alternatives. And then it's with the labor, and we're going to talk about a lot tonight with the labor crunch or shortage that we have. I have been focusing more, to learn more about this factory style building that we're going to talk about. And in fact, I have a friend of mine who's a builder, and he is in the middle right now of a modular build. And the home was set a couple weeks ago. And there we have it up on the screen right now. So this is actually, this is my friend's building project that he's doing for a client in Montgomery County. And but anyway, I want to kind of bring us to, back to the day. And I used to work at a company called Sears. And when I was a kid, I worked in the merchandise pickup. But one of the things that I used to love about Sears growing up was you could shop, for your presents in their holiday catalog, their Christmas catalog. So I can remember going through the pages, as a kid and tagging things and writing down a list of things that I was interested for, to get as gifts. So back in 1908, Richard Sears of Sears, Roebuck and Company began selling home kits through this catalog that started out, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. And a lot of those homes exist today and still are being resold, and families are living in them. So Sears, as a market leader at that time, started to do some very interesting things. And of course, they were selling farm equipment and utensils and feed and seed and everything else to the rural agricultural America. But then in the late 90s, 1890s, and into the teens and 20s, there started to be a more industrialization. Part of industrialization of America were moving people into the cities, and they were looking for housing. And Sears identified it properly that there was a need for housing, and if in fact they could deliver a home on a flatbed trailer or train car or something like that, then these Sears customers could actually build their own home, or a contractor in an area could build their own home. So it really started this modularized prefab concept that these components can be put together, pre-cut, pre-assembled in some cases, and delivered to a site where a contractor, or in the old days, a home buyer, could get the kit and put these things together. So it was kind of the beginning of a new way to look at things. It was part of that industrialization of America and understanding how a process could deliver an end goal or end result through that process. So housing was no different than that, and of course. Throughout those teens and 20s, after Sears, and they identified this package home, this unitized home that could be delivered to the home site. Kind of in a separate path beside that, there were labor. Labor was migrating to wherever the work was. I can remember my grandfather telling me about he and his brothers, they would get into a car and they'd go to Baltimore and they'd work a job in Baltimore for 3 or 4 months. And then they'd go to Philadelphia. And in that time, most of the labor was camping out. They were camping out, or they had the luxury possibly of having what was called a trailer, a camp trailer. And they were using the camp trailers to kind of act as their home during this transitional or migration period, where they would go in and work on a job and then go home after that. In about 1930s, then those home type environments, in a very small way that could be towed behind a car, stimulated the RV industry. And the RV industry started to really catch on, and people of means would buy the RVs and they would go on what we would call glamping now. So that's the early version of glamping. And from there, of course, then we got in World War II, and returning veterans came back, and instead of going back to the farms where they had come from when they enlisted, they went back into the cities looking for work in the factories and other places. And it stimulated the housing economy back in the mid 40s, late 40s. And interestingly enough, factory built housing had a huge role in the population of returning veterans into the subdivisions and neighborhoods. And many of those homes were built in a factory remotely. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio for most of my childhood. The neighborhood I was growing up in started in 1946. And only recently did I realize the homes built in that neighborhood came from a home building plant in New York. So it's an interesting interesting trail when you watch and see exactly what's happened and how the homes came to be the way they are today. And of course, in the 50s, they were looking more and more towards this, what was called the mobile home or a trailer. And that was really a little more than a shade and shelter. Having visited my grandparents, and my mom and dad were from West Virginia, having seen the need for economic housing, and it was answered with truly potentially the lowest form of shade and shelter that you could possibly get. And from there, that's what began to set the perception of inexpensive, poorly built, and those type of things. And of course, that's not the case today, but that's the transition of, homes in a box to travel trailers, to RV business, to homes built in segments in the factory, to manufactured homes or mobile homes back in the day that were helping low income and working class families to have a place they could call their own.
So what came first? So just kind of explain to everyone the difference between manufactured housing and modular housing.
Yeah, and we get that question all the time. It's real simple. The two are built to different codes. Manufactured housing was really recognized officially in June 15th, 1976, when the standards from HUD were published in 1974. HUD was required to publish some standards. They went to work in 76. They actually published the standards for the entire production and construction of a home, June 15th, 1976. And from that moment forward, they were called manufactured homes.
Prior to
And
that, they were the
manufactured
mobile
home,
home.
that's correct. Yep, absolutely. And there was really no standard to their construction. If anyone can remember as a kid seeing a mobile home torn down that had been built in the late 40s or 50s, they can remember the insulation was either non-existent or paper. Newspaper crunched up and put into the wall. So what HUD did in 76 was said, this is a primary form of housing. It represents today, it represents between 8 and 12% of all housing constructed, new housing constructed every year. And HUD said, if you're going to build it, this is the way you have to build it. And they put a standard in there. It's been updated many times between 76 and now. But that was the point at which all the homes built to the HUD code are considered manufactured homes. The other thing with manufactured homes are they're built on a steel frame, and the steel frame stays with that home, much like the I-beams in a site-built home with a basement. You know, there are I-beams in there, but this steel frame stays with that manufactured home, and the anticipation was that it would be mobile. It could be moved to another site, but however, we find 96% of the homes that are cited, the manufactured homes that are cited, never get moved. So
yeah. So when we look back, let's put that picture back up for a second that we just had on. So I think what we're looking at here, Chris, is would you say that I mean, it looks like they're on wheels, so that would then predate this 70, you said 76?
Very,
74.
very likely and very
Yeah.
possible. 76,
Right.
June 15th, 76 is when the HUD code actually went into effect. There were some information conversations going on prior to that to try to get HUD to that point, but that's the official recognized point where
So
the
why did
HUD
HUD
standards were
step in? I
published.
mean, you know, was it? I mean, I know you're saying that it was sort of like a substandard kind of build, and
Yeah.
but what was the trigger? I mean, what made them? And were things happening? I mean, what was the main reason why? And I know there really wasn't too much in regulation after
Mm-hmm.
World War II. Is sort of when they started with the building codes and things like that. I mean, even
Right.
before then, I mean, people just built multiple houses on their property. You know, they just moved their family right there, or maybe, you know, maybe they even put mobile homes side by side. You know, but at what point did HUD kind of step in? Why? And
I think, yeah, that's a great question, and I really do believe it's because of the volume. Um, in the 70s, the industry, manufactured housing industry, was building in excess of 300,000 units a year of what at that time was considered mobile homes. And the volume itself attracted attention of the code community, and their closer look identified some construction methods and materials that they didn't think were particularly positive for the homeowner. So
newspaper
that's what
wasn't good
sponsored.
insulation.
That's not good insulation. That's exactly right. So because of the volume and because of the percentage of new housing that the manufactured housing or mobile homes represented at that time, it became a very it attracted a lot of attention, and that attention then reverted to conversation, discussion, code discussion by MHCC, and then ultimately publishing of the code by HUD. So so manufactured housing is built to a HUD code, and a HUD code is a national federal code that, if built to, will allow it to be certified.
And now
Modular on
your
the
modular.
yeah. Yeah, and modular, on the other hand, is built to the local code. It's built to the IRC. It's built to whatever building code is required in the location that home will be sited. So the same building code that a site builder is held to, a modular home builder will be held to as well. That's the real difference. So a modular home will be considered a very close cousin to site built. Manufactured home will be considered a second or third cousin to site built in the past. So the nice thing is that as we've seen technology and some other things evolve, we've been able to see the manufactured housing product evolve, so that HUD code homes have a frame, and the frame stays with the house. Modular homes have a frame that is used to transport the house to the site, but then the home itself is lifted off the frame and put onto a permanent foundation. These are HUD code homes. They're built possibly in the very same factory or the plant that is used to build modular. So modular and HUD could be being built side by side. This is exactly what a plant looks like as it goes down. In the old days, 70s, when I first got into home building products, 70s and even early 80s, there were material and products that were sized specifically for manufactured housing. Today, the same materials that are used on a site-built home are used by a manufactured home builder. So whether it's mod or HUD or site-built with IRC, all the 2x4s are made by Georgia Pacific or another lumber company. All the material, all the insulation is Owens Corning or Johns Manville. All the sinks are brand name. So if you were to walk through a manufactured home building facility, you would recognize the brand names that are being used for mica countertops and that type of thing, Delta faucets. It has transitioned from custom made, custom sized products for a smaller version of a home to using standard fixtures and features that you would see in any site built home or modular home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I know with manufactured housing, it seems to be more difficult to get a traditional mortgage. Is it possible? I mean, I noticed that a lot of the dealers, as an alternative, I guess, so they can sell their product, they offer the financing option. So,
Yep.
I guess, can you get a traditional mortgage with a manufactured home, a home that is with the steel rails?
Mm-hmm.
And if not, are these manufacturers that are providing financing, are they competitive? I mean, is it competitive for a home buyer, or are they at a disadvantage?
Yeah, it's really conversations about value appreciation, and can I build family wealth through my real estate holdings by home ownership? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And for a modular unit, because it is built on a permanent foundation, the frame does not remain with it, and it's built to that IRC code, that local building code. A modular home can qualify for a traditional mortgage through your local bank, just like everything else. Typically, a modular home will appraise close to or at the site-built home comps. So that's also great news for modular. Manufactured housing, up until about 4 years ago, had to rely on specialty lenders. The cost of their funds were higher. That meant the interest rate was higher. The closing costs were probably the same, but as a percent of the loan, which was lower, it was always a higher percentage. So they being the industry, relied, and home buyers that bought manufactured housing relied on these specialty lenders that were in the marketplace. And at that time, they were securitizing those loans and selling them to Wall Street. Housing crash hit in 07, 08. Some of those went away. The securitization dropped back. And companies like Berkshire Hathaway and others started to warehouse their own money, so own loans. So that's what happened. In comes Fannie and Freddie. Congress says, wait a minute, Fannie and Freddie, we're bailing you out. This is in the crisis. We're bailing you out. Therefore, you will have a duty to serve all of our taxpayers, because all of our taxpayers' money is being used to bail you out. So Fannie and Freddie looked at the manufactured housing area, which was one of the specific areas Congress and the duty to serve focused them on, and said, we want to do something significant. If we're going to participate in this, if we have to do it anyway, let's do it right. Let's do it big. Let's go, go big or go home type of thing. Freddie and Fannie embraced this industry as a potential of affordable housing and high value housing with the opportunity to appreciate. So they introduced manufactured housing product that would be used through their associated lenders, and a couple of products. One's called MH Advantage and one's called Choice. Choice is from Freddie, MH Advantage is from Fannie, that lenders can access to make legitimate mortgage-like loans on manufactured housing that have specific characteristics, like we just saw on the pictures that were on the screen earlier. So it was a major step. It was with Freddie and Fannie entering into the marketplace, it was almost an endorsement that manufactured and modular housing is a value. They also went further to tell the Appraisal Institute and appraisers that were looking at manufactured HUD code homes that site-built comps could be used. And that was a big step for the appraisers, certainly for the industry, lenders, and it legitimized the purchase, the consideration and purchase of a manufactured home by a home buyer. So that's
great news.
A lot of stuff has gone on in the last 5 years.
That's great news for everyone, right? I mean, if
it really
you
is.
Want that type of home, that's what you can afford, and certainly you should be able to obtain home ownership. And so I think that's great. Are there any zoning laws? I mean, you travel all over the United States. I mean, are there any zoning laws anywhere that prohibit now manufactured type housing? I know that, when we were talking about what they were previously known for as trailer homes,
yep.
There were a lot of restrictions.
I'll tell you, the zoning and planning groups in cities and municipalities have yet to catch up with the new manufactured housing product. And part of what Fannie and Freddie are doing, Freddie engaged the Appraisal Institute to make sure appraisers understood what to look for, how to appraise it, when and how they could use site-built comps and that type of thing. So that was a big step. But the zoning continues to be a significant problem in places that need housing in general, whether it be infill lots that are vacant and attracting blight and crime in a city. Baltimore's a great example. There's thousands of vacant lots that are attracting trash, crime, blight, no tax income for the city, and that empty lot is eroding the value of any homes that are in that neighborhood already. So very similar situation existed in San Bernardino, California. A group out there has started to populate the empty lots in San Bernardino with manufactured housing, meeting specific characteristics that would qualify for MH Advantage and Choice Homes loan products. And when we went to the council to request the variance and the rezoning of these lots to allow manufactured housing, we had neighbors actually coming into the council meeting testifying that they wanted this product beside them. They knew this product would elevate and continue to appreciate their homes. So
Were they
the
shot
home
down?
no, we the council approved the rezoning unanimously, and we're going through a very similar process in many cities around the country. Unfortunately, R1 typically excludes manufactured housing, and what we're trying to do is get R1 to accept manufactured housing, especially this new class of manufactured housing that rivals any site-built home. So it's
So
still a battle.
let's kind of talk about the difference in the code. So what is the difference between HUD code and, which is more of a, national, I guess, maybe that's just a bare minimal, that you need to do for building.
Yep.
But what's the difference between, the local code and the HUD code?
Yeah, I think the and your viewers and listeners may disagree with this, but one of the big areas is that a manufactured HUD code home is set with a pier and beam type set. So you have the piers underneath the beams. There is no load from the house set on the perimeter foundation. So that's typically one major difference between HUD and mod. Mod, on the other hand, just like a site built, is built so that the load is distributed on the top of that perimeter foundation and not on pier and beam set. So that's probably the biggest difference. There are some other differences in how the trusses are built and the spacing and that type of thing. Most of the time, and a lot of the builders of HUD code homes now build their houses in essence to that higher level code. But the main part is the foundation, and talking about foundation. The other thing to remember,
is there any difference in the safety or the
that's exactly where I was going to go.
Yeah.
It's interesting that with the HUD code home, in addition to that pier and beam set, there's also things called tie downs, and it actually anchors, depending on the soil condition. You could have anywhere between 10 and 20 anchors that are put into the ground, so it anchors that home to earth. So in the case of a high wind, a tornado, or hurricane, there's a greater likelihood that house will not move from its foundation.
We actually have a picture. We have a picture here of a house on its roof leaning up against another manufactured house. Here we go.
Yep. Now, in that case, it's possibly that house wasn't anchored to the ground, and in that wind, but recently,
blew it over.
Yep, blew it right over, and that's because it wasn't anchored properly. The one beside it possibly was anchored properly without looking at the ground and the foundation. What was happening there? Be hard to say. There was an engineering survey done at a manufactured home community down in Florida near Tampa after a hurricane hit, and a site built factory that was less than a half a mile from the community was obliterated by the hurricane, and engineers went into the community and found that houses that were set since 1980, none of them had even moved off their foundation. So it's that kind of thing. When done properly, when done right, when inspected, when certified, to get that C of O, especially today, there's a greater chance that home will not end up like you see here on the screen.
We have a comment here from Evan. Thanks for helping me understand the difference between a trailer and a manufactured house. Evan, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you. And if you guys, this is a live show, so if you are listening while we're live, go ahead and comment your questions. We'll be happy to get the answers for you that you're looking for. And all of Chris's information will be in the show notes after tonight. And so feel free to reach out to him as well with your questions. And if you comment on the video, if you're watching it after we have gone live here, go ahead and comment. And we'll be sure to get back to you if you have any questions. So let's kind of talk about the advantages of a factory built home. I've been in the building industry for quite some time. I started swinging a hammer 32 years ago and have built houses, rehab plenty. I have never set a modular or a manufactured house. Witnessing up close and personal, like I said, my first, now it's actually being built right now. So what are some of the advantages? I mean, as a builder, as a construction guy, I mean, I can certainly probably think of a couple myself. Why would somebody want a factory built house?
Yeah, let's start with the materials. That's the easiest place. So one of the larger manufactured home builders in the industry builds 50,000 homes a year. And when you're building 50,000 homes a year, it's when you go to a GE or a Whirlpool or someone and you say, I'm going to order 50,000 stoves or ranges from you, plus refrigerators, you're going to get the very best pricing. Some of the builders are so large that they don't deal with lumber distributors. They deal specifically and directly with the mill. And by cutting out the distributors, you're saving money there. So you're buying in great quantities at reduced prices, and those savings are passed on to the home buyer. So the materials themselves are bought in quantity and at the very best prices possible. Yeah, better than Lowe's, better than Home Depot, better than anything back east or anything like that. So that's number one. Number two, I'm a laborer. Since you were a builder, that day when you walk up and you say, where are the roofers? Where are these guys? And they're over in the next neighborhood. They had two other houses they had to finish first.
That's
or
right.
It's raining and they can't get up on the roof, or it's too windy, or whatever it is.
Or their crew didn't show up.
That's exactly right. And in a plant, in a home building facility, there's never a rainy day. There's never a day that's too hot to work. And as a labor person, as someone that's a labor, I have a job 40 hours a week. I show up in the morning. I go home at night. I have benefits. I have health insurance. I have a constant source of income for my family. And I can work every day of the year. I get vacation, full benefits. Where would I rather work? Am I going to work out in the hot sun in Texas or in Maryland and hope for jobs to come my way? The market's not always going to be like it is today. It's a seller's market now and a builder's market now, but it hasn't always been that way, and it won't be that way again at some point in time. So as labor, I'm going to a place where I can feel more comfortable with my income for my family and other things. So,
and you're going to the same place every single day. I know,
yeah,
being in the construction business, the laborers, your techs, your carpenters, they actually drive to the job. So, I mean, the job site could be 2 hours from where they live.
Yep, exactly right. And so we have economics associated with materials. We have a stable workforce that we train specifically. A roofer always roofs. He roofs 8 hours a day. Carpenter, he puts up sticks 8 hours a day. Flooring guy, he puts down flooring, OSB and other things every day. So they learn those tasks. They're apprenticed on the job. They do those tasks over and over and over again, and they become very efficient and proficient in doing that. So
do they cross train? I mean, is there a lot of cross? Because I know, like if you're building a house, you're going to hire a framing contractor,
Hmm.
right? And or the concrete guy or whatever. And so you're, like you said, you're waiting for that next crew to show up.
Yep.
And these guys, if they're framing contractors, they're framing all day. That's all they do. When you're talking about factory production, do
Hmm.
they make it a point to actually cross train these employees?
I'm speaking out of school, but what I've witnessed is um, they're specifically trained for a single function. Only if that person is interested in moving to a different operation or learning a different skill are they then cross-trained. Many of the cabinets that are put into the homes, some of them are purchased from Marilat, others are constructed in the plant themselves. So if a carpenter wants to go from framing to the cabinet shop, they may do some cross training along those lines. So typically, though, if you ever get a chance to go into a manufactured home facility, it's very interesting because they start with a frame and they build from bottom up, but they start with a frame and they put the flooring on, insulation, then they go right down the line. And it typically is like a production line. So it'll go from the chassis and insulation to flooring, and then it'll go to wall units. Wall units could be built in another department and craned over or conveyed over to be set in place. They don't. We don't waste. We don't waste material on bracing. I should say we. The industry doesn't waste material for bracing. They don't waste material that's arrives at the wrong length or something like that. They materials are cut to length in many cases, and the waste for a manufactured home of 1,600 square feet, the waste will fill two 32-gallon trash cans. Where waste on a building site, I mean, I see it every day in my neighborhood. Waste on a building site will easily fill. Yeah, there it is. That was a house 2 doors from me. That was one across the street from me. This is the kind of waste that we see on site built. And when you look at that material, a lot of it is full dimensional material, but it has nails in it and can't be used otherwise. And it was used to prop up a wall temporarily until the floor truss could get placed on it for a second floor. So much greener product, great utilization of materials, highly efficient labor, a process that goes through a single house will be built in about 6 days. And when that house comes out, it will be ready to set. You join the roof, you put a ridge cap on it, and ultimately, in the first day, you could, if you wanted to, lock the front door and secure it. This is a great example of a modular going in. It's a 2-story modular with a raised roof, and they crane it in place. They take it off the frame, they crane it in place, and you can see the elevation on this house is going to be fantastic. A group that does a really good job with panelized product, which is another factory built housing technique. Ryan and Ryland Homes, and Ryland is very prevalent in the Maryland area. They still utilize panelized construction, and they will, once they have the foundation and the flooring, the first floor in, they will bring in a flatbed with panelized product and have a house under roof within a few days. So that's when you look at a Ryan, and Todd, you're selling Ryland Homes to people all the time, and they're a great product, and that's made in the factory, and it's built to the IRC code just like the modular is, and HUD code is quickly approaching the IRC code from a quality and potential appreciation for it.
So as far as cost savings, I mean, do
Yep.
you feel that there is a fair amount of cost savings to the homeowner?
Yeah, I talk in realistic terms. So sometimes my numbers won't jive with what the industry advertises, um, or quite frankly, some of the statistics would suggest. Realistic with land, finished product, landscape, bushes, garage, everything like that. For a modular over a site built, you can expect anywhere between 5 and 15% cost savings to a home buyer. If it goes HUD, you can
and that's if everything goes exactly
that's
right.
exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know what I'm doing, and I'm coming in and I'm putting 15 of these in a row. So you can expect 15% savings over site build. If I was a developer doing a neighborhood and I could see, geez, I can save 15% on my costs, plus I can reduce the cost of capital that I'm going to use up as the time, because I can set this house and people can move in 45 days. Then all of a sudden I'm starting to say, wait a minute, there's some dollar and cents above and beyond the construction costs that could be meaningful for me as a developer or builder. So it's very interesting when I look at the dynamics. Now that's mod, and a lot of that transfers over to HUD. A HUD construction, because the frame stays on it, the foundation, while it is permanent foundation, it's a FHA Title II type foundation, it can be less expensive because you're not putting the load on the perimeter wall. So the perimeter wall, the block there, is merely aesthetics. And so you can see savings anywhere from 10 as high as 25% with HUD code housing. And again, that depends on how many you're doing, how knowledgeable you are in doing it. But you do 2 or 3 or 4, you're going to get real knowledgeable real fast. And the contractors that you use, the subs that you use, will allow you to really install a high value product.
Well, we have a question here. So there are 2 things that you mentioned that I don't want to forget.
Okay.
One of them was, so don't let me forget, but one of them was the financing aspect. I don't want to talk about it yet, but I want to talk about the draws with financing, right?
Yeah.
But I also want to talk about the disadvantages. So, but before we get to that point, Evan is asking, and we actually are starting to see where what he's talking about here, shipping containers. How do you see the retrofitting of shipping containers, tie into the attainable housing push versus traditional modular home? This is a great question. And we are starting to see where the shipping containers, even from a design standpoint, more of a modern look.
Yep.
We're starting to see where this is, becoming highly desirable.
Yeah, that's a great question, Evan. Thanks for asking it. And it's interesting, as we've seen thousands of surplus containers come into the country. They get unloaded. They're at the end of their life. What do you do with it? You dump it in a landfill, or somebody innovative comes up with a way that you can use this for housing. There are quite a few actually, smaller manufacturers, and they build to the mod code. So they build to IRC. They're craned into place. They're anchored with permanent foundations. And now some of those companies, one in particular I know in Utah, has run out of containers. Their supply of containers cannot support the demand for their product. So they're actually building with the steel frame a container themselves to use in the construction of their product. And like you said, Todd, the product itself can take on that kind of modern vibe, but there's also quite a few container homes that are bringing kind of a craftsman look to it, and depending on what siding you put on it and how you want to treat it, really can it's a full range of elevations that you can get off of that. But they've gotten a lot of attention because it's so hip and looks so different than what we would expect. Typically, they're all built using the IRC code and would have to meet all local codes to wherever that's going to be sited. So, great question.
I will mention too, Evan, we are in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a podcast, not to certainly sway off of this podcast, but we're going to have a panel and we're going to talk about concrete construction and using these shipping containers as well. So probably 3 or 4 weeks away, but definitely something that you want to, pay attention to. So thanks for that question. Donna
Tom,
Akers, we have a,
if I, while you're getting that other question ready,
yep.
It's so because I tune into innovation in the industry. There is some great examples of 3D printing going on now. In Virginia, down in Richmond, there's a 3D printed home getting ready to go on the market. It's done in cooperation with Virginia Tech, and it's a very exciting technology. So as housing becomes even more, we become more desperate with housing. It pushes us into a disruption that forces innovation. We're going to see some innovation around the country, like 3D printed homes, whether it be a foundation only, whether it be the sidewalls, or everything, like an Adobe type home. It's going to be very exciting in the next couple of decades to see the progress in the HUD code type homes and the IRC built homes, but with technology like 3D printing, like shipping containers, like others that are being considered and used in some experimental fashions right now. So it's pretty exciting. I'm sorry about the next question.
What we really need, and we've spoke about this before, you and I, Chris, but what we really need is to start focusing on the red tape that is preventing a lot of affordable housing from happening around the country. And that's a completely different topic, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of great, materials, that are, available to build safe, affordable housing.
Yep.
And the development costs are just so freaking expensive that, it just makes it cost prohibitive on some of these products. Donna is saying, this is just a comment, that she must be an agent. So Donna, thanks for watching. Had a listing from an original owner, 30 plus years. The owner called one night and said the house was moving. Weird. I thought I advised her I would come by the next day. I checked the doors. Some would not shut, and you could see the difference. Upon inspection, the inspector found that the anchors had not been installed. That manufactured home stayed in place for quite a while. Thank goodness she wasn't in like a tornado belt,
Yeah, that's right.
Heavy winds, was probably protected.
Yeah, this goes to the fact that we always have heard knowledge is power. Educate yourself as to what it should be and how it should be set, and then insist on that. So one of the things that Manufactured Homes, modularhomes.com tries to do is educate that consumer on understanding the product, understanding what you need to specify and require, and then hiring and holding those subcontractors and general contractor to those standards. And that's the situation she was in. Could have been settling, could have been a whole different set of things. But if she was in a windy situation and that house was not anchored, that was an invitation for disaster and a huge liability for that builder if that builder was still in business. So I can't stress enough, know what to ask for, know what to insist on, know what to look for. Sometimes the loan, getting over to the financing lending side of it, the loan that you're trying to obtain will require the home to have certain features. Make sure you understand what those features are. It's not difficult. It just takes a little bit of time and your willingness to dig in and try to understand it. So as a home buyer, that's important. As a realtor selling manufactured housing, there's a lot of it out there. You've got to understand exactly what it is, and we have classes and things like that you can get enrolled in to try to get yourself up to speed so you know what you're looking at.
We have a comment here from Ruth. She said, thanks, guys. Ruth, thank you for watching. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Ruth.
So let's talk about some of the disadvantages. So I know there are a couple, and one that comes to mind, but I'll let you lead. What from somebody that's in this business, what are some of the disadvantages? And maybe it's just like you're saying right now, the things that you need to be knowledgeable about that, when it comes to factory built housing. But what would you say some of the disadvantages are?
I think some of the disadvantages are perception and stigma that exists today. I think the lack of education as to what the new today's manufactured housing is sometimes limits the possibilities and the options that we identify in manufactured housing. So that education is a big part of it. Disadvantages about living or buying a home is the appraisal. The appraisals haven't caught up to how to value manufactured housing. Freddie and Fannie both are working very hard on that. Appraisal Institute is working very hard on that. They had a meeting, a panel discussion yesterday at the Appraisal Institute annual meeting down in Orlando, where it was discussed as to the financing and what was involved, what was required, and that type of thing. So there's strides being made, but the disadvantage really with manufactured housing is a limitation in our own minds about what we think manufactured housing is and what it really is. So that's one of the disadvantages is individually being biased against something that we really don't understand or haven't taken a look at recently.
What about change orders? Excuse me.
Yes, it used to be when you had a garage or a elevated roof or putting dormers in, you would have to have a construction letter for alternate construction. So some of those regulations in the last administration had been relaxed a little bit so that the alternate construction letter wasn't required on certain things. There are still quite a few technological things that you want to insist on, firewalls and things like that. But some of that is been relaxed. I won't say alleviated, but relaxed. And if you are working with a trustworthy contractor, general contractor, and subs, that should not be an issue. And certificate of occupation should not be a big deal in trying to get. So.
I know that, excuse me.
Yeah, you're all right.
Man, talking too much today. I know that on the one project that I'm following very closely, Chris, change orders has been a really big thing with sort of a disadvantage, at least on the modular build side.
Well, because
the buyer didn't really realize when she was going through the sales process, the kitchen actually came with 30-inch wall cabinets. So certainly when the house was placed and she actually started going through it, she's looking at the cabinets going, wow, these look really small. So now these things are really costing her a lot of money. Things like a front porch, a covered front porch. You're kind of locked in. So what can somebody do to really pay attention through this process, or what kind of homework can someone do to really make sure that they're not going to make these types of mistakes? Because when it's built, it's built.
Yep. When it's built, it's built. And any manufacturer, any home builder will tell you the most expensive time to make a change is when the house is almost finished and you want to make that change. You want to change the cabinets. You want to put a wall here. You want to put an extra door in. You want to put a window in. That's when it's going to cost you a lot of money. Same thing with manufacturer or factory built housing. The time to repair an item or fix an item or make sure it's properly installed is at the plant. That's where you have the labor. That's where you have it protected. That's the best time, least cost option. From a home buyer standpoint, first thing they need to do is when they're considering manufactured housing or modular housing, they get with a company that has a great reputation. I do a search on the internet for lawsuits against that individual and see what comes up. As a consumer, I want to go get my hands on it. I want to look at it. If I have to go to the factory to look at it, then great, I'll do that. But I want to get my hands on it. When I'm talking to my salesperson, I want somebody that I can trust. And when I say, I want to have this kitchen, this is the kitchen I want, they will know, oh, okay, those are bigger cabinets, those are taller cabinets, are going to go to the ceiling, all those kind. You want a stainless steel sink, oh, you want a farm sink, great, we can do all of that. But they have to have somebody they trust. And if at all possible, if the manufacturer, the builder allows you to take a factory tour, take a factory tour. See how your house is going to go together. Maybe it's not your house on the line that day, but you're going to see how they treat and handle other people's homes that they're building. So, and those are all possible to certain differing extents. But those, and quite frankly, part of it is on us as consumers. We've got to be informed. We've got to understand what it is we're buying.
Yeah, well, I
And
know, as a home builder, when the buyer's walking through the site built home, they can
yeah,
actually see, now, wait a minute, this closet's not as big as I thought it was.
yep,
Can we extend it? Or it's too big. Can we push it back? Or, can we do this or that? So even things like swing of a door, left swing,
yep,
right swing, you're walking in the room. Well, gee, I really thought that I wanted it this way, but I'd rather have it this way. So my experience, just, kind of, buyers beware, make sure that, I can just see, as somebody that has been in the building industry for a long time, building houses, where somebody can make these costly mistakes, and it may end up costing more once you get the house
yep,
set in place. So
yep.
let's talk, I didn't forget. So let's talk about the financing, because, I know when you're building a home, you're going to go through a period of draw schedule. So you kind of get approved for the construction loan, right? You
Mm-hmm.
go like a construction to permanent loan,
Yep.
permanent mortgage. And, as a builder, I am fed draws as
Right.
I complete these milestones till we
Mm-hmm.
get the house finished. So I can pay my bills and things like that.
Yep.
How does that work when you're dealing with manufactured or modular construction? Do they get a lump sum payment? I mean, how is the mortgage company keeping the money flowing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really depends on the builder. We have a lot of builders that don't take draws at all because the construction time is 30 to 45 days. Sometimes it lingers to 60, but it's a very short period. So by the time they get the invoice, they're already paid for the entire house, and they go forward. In a situation where they're developers and they're coming in doing all the foundations at once, and then they bring the houses in, they're setting them, there could be some need for draws. And Fannie and Freddie both have a construction to perm situation where you can have draws. Most of the lenders that you'll work with that are specialty lenders for manufactured housing have a construction to perm type loan that will allow you to take draws on that as well. So it depends on your lender, of course, but it's something that you would get, kind of nailed down at the beginning to say, hey, we're going to need a draw 2 months in, we're going to need a draw 3 months in, and then by that time, if your customer is not living in the house, then something else went wrong.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
So you rely on, I know the process when you're getting a building permit, you still need home inspections, right? Site
Yep.
inspections from the various trades, the electrical, the plumbing, the, framing, things like that. What is the difference with these factory built homes as far as getting those inspections? Do you find that most of the municipalities they have a clue of what they're looking at? Walls are closed up. I mean, are they
Mm-hmm.
relying solely on the engineered certificates that the engineers inspected them, and at the factory, and that's kind of acceptable?
That's a great question. And as far as the inspection and approval, if it's closed wall system, then all those approvals and inspection and approvals are going on at the plant. There's a third party inspector that's licensed under HUD that comes in. They will walk every home at a plant, at a manufactured housing plant, HUD code, and they will certify that it's been built to the HUD standards. Only on certification is it then tagged and registered with a serial number with HUD And that's how that inspection goes. And that's an inspector that's on site 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever the construction time is, and they're making inspections there. So when that house leaves that facility, it meets HUD code. If it doesn't meet HUD code, if it's not inspected and not approved, it doesn't leave the
Now that's on the
facility.
manufacturing side, but what about on the modular side?
So anything built on site, foundation, footers, you still have to go through the normal processes of getting those footers approved, and it's the same process as you would go through at
What
any
about the
anything.
boxes, the pieces that are built in the factory?
No, those arrive. They've already been inspected. They've already been certified. They do not have to be re-inspected. On a modular home, that's what sometimes slows down the process a little bit with a modular and also increases the cost. Every step along the way, that local inspector has to go to the plant in order to inspect that, or contract with an inspector to inspect that electric
So that's
or water or whatever.
the local builder or the homeowner's responsibility to say, hey, I'm in Maryland, my house is being manufactured in Delaware. You have to just probably pay a surcharge. The county's going to handle that. Is that
No,
the way that works?
the manufacturer will coordinate all that. So once you order a home, they know, for example, a mod is tied to a specific site. So once that specific site, that manufacturer will identify all the codes that are required. They will contact those code departments and coordinate the inspections with that code department to come out to the plant, do the inspection, so that when those boxes arrive on site, they are already approved. But anything built, like you were talking about, a covered porch, a garage, the footers, the foundation, all of those are built on site. They have to be inspected by those local inspectors and certified as meeting the requirements. And that should be all done by your general.
Yeah, I can see that's an extra permit, right? That's, you need a front porch permit, you need this, you need that. So you're going to make a couple trips. So that could be a disadvantage, that you're going to make a couple trips to the county, see your local building inspector.
And if I was a customer and wanted a porch, I would look at a model that the porch can be built in the factory itself, in the plant itself, and integrate it into the design of the house. More and more plants, more and more home building facilities are creating floor plans that have integral front porches and decks, and those are built at the factories.
Let's take a look at, and I know we have from your site, one of your websites.
Yeah,
hopefully we're going to see that in a second. I think here we go.
There we go.
These are some of the designs that from your website, I think.
Yep.
Joe is going to pull them up here. These are manufactured, or no, these are modular houses, right?
No, these are HUD code. These are HUD code.
These are manufactured. Yeah. I mean, guys, you can't tell the difference. I mean, when you look at these houses, it's amazing. Where's the line? There we go. Look at some of these.
That's a HUD code.
I mean, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And I know on the modular side, if you guys are listening to this through audio, you have to check it out. Go to any video platform that you like, whether it's social media or YouTube, and check out these photos, or just go to Chris's website. We'll have all of his information published. And but really neat. I even saw on the modular side, I even saw mansions. There were mansions that were on your site that, I mean, you'd never look at them and see that they were built in a plant.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, the possibilities.
Yeah, really. So I'll tell you a funny story. So we're out on my buddies. There you go. There's some of the different types of houses that you got to be really looking fast, but there's the mansion. Yeah. But anyway, so I was out on my friend, his construction site, when they were setting these 4 boxes of this modular home, and he didn't know to get a lane closure permit with the county.
Yeah.
And so, all of a sudden, the traffic's being blocked, flaggers. I mean, he had the right guys out there doing the job, but he just didn't know to get a permit. And here comes the inspector. And the inspector was just I mean, he let him go. He didn't make him stop or anything, but it was such a neat process to watch with the crane there, setting these pieces that the inspector was there for a couple hours just watching. I think he was more interested in what was going on than he was shutting them down. But that's another consideration. These big pieces of house that are going down the road, they can't just travel on the roads that you might be driving on. I mean, you might need some kind of permits to escorts, to block the traffic off and let them through. Very big, pieces of modular housing or manufactured housing on a tractor trailer truck.
Yeah. So in Texas, it could be as much as 18 feet wide. And,
everything's big in Texas.
Everything's bigger in Texas. But I tell you, your friend will probably not forget that lesson. And next time he brings one in, he'll have a permit. So
he was very grateful. He was very grateful. There was a lot at stake, right? I don't know how quick you can get a road closure permit, but there was a lot at stake that day.
Yeah.
We'll get ready and kind of wind down here. But
Sure.
Chris, we're in the real estate business. So we're agents. We're giving advice to people all the time. We have people, like I said early on in the podcast, they're very frustrated because they've been bidding on houses and they didn't get them.
Yeah.
Now people are starting to look at other alternatives, building, buying lots and going through this process. What advice can you give to the local agent, the realtors that, that work hard every day, trying to serve buyers, sellers too, but in this case, buyers? What kind of advice? I mean, you had mentioned a class. Do these manufacturers, do they work with agents? Do they cooperate? I mean, if they, a lot of times a builder, if they go and help them with a new house, the builders cooperate and make sure the agents are taking care of it. Is this the same way with the factory style housing?
I think it's a growing process. If you'd allow me, I want to back up just a bit. Freddie Mac suggested that we are 3 million housing units in the hole to meet our housing demand. Fannie Mae looked even deeper than that and said for affordable housing, we're as much as 7 million houses short for affordable housing, attainable housing. The bottom line on that is we as home builders, we as a home building industry and a real estate industry have to look for affordable, attainable, entry-level, first-time homeowners' homes. With that being said, in the coming decades, as a realtor, you will see more and more manufactured homes that have been built to the HUD code appear in your neighborhoods, and you will eventually be asked to resell them or list them for that homeowner. The advice I implore with you is to understand what manufactured housing is. If it's a MH Advantage home, understand why it qualifies for MH Advantage, why it qualifies for choice, what the difference is. This is not rocket science, guys. This is stuff that you can know. And yes, the sales price might be less than a site-built home, with 500 extra square feet or 250 extra square feet, but you're going to be able to multiply this. Entry-level homes today are 225 to 275, unfortunately, unsubsidized. Manufactured housing can hit those price points. And with that and certification and mortgage-like lending on manufactured housing, you're going to see appreciation in family wealth. And with the appraisal changes that are coming about, you're going to see fair valuation of those properties going forward. And with a little bit of knowledge, you're going to be able to understand manufactured housing and what's involved and how to sell it. And you'll be able to sell multiple units where you'd have to spend a lot more time selling a single site built unit. So,
So what I think, I mean, what I think I hear you saying is that this is a growing relationship. It's a growing process, but if you are an agent, I'm just kind of curious as to, I mean, would this be sort of like some type of niche market that an agent could go after and say, look, I want to look more into, factory built housing, whether it's manufacturer or modular, because a lot of these manufacturers, they do the actual setting too. They actually are the GCs. So, you kind of have two scenarios. You have, you're building a house where you need a GC or a builder that's independent, and then they work with the factory, the manufacturers, or you actually have the manufacturers themselves that will maybe cover an area where they will do the actual construction too. What I would recommend is, start opening up the doors, try and see in your market what type of, manufacturer home factories there are, and see if they have any programs for real estate agents to cooperate with these manufacturers to be able to sell lots to prospective buyers and be able to be involved in the process and represent them along the way. Chris, man, great info, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, great information. Thank you so much for being on our show.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Like I said, anybody reach out to Chris. He is, very reachable. As you see, very down to earth. He would love to hear from you. All of his information will be in our show notes, guys. Thank you so much for watching another Tuesday night podcast, and we hope to see you next week.
Have fun.